Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. So the title of this video might not be overly clear, but I expect the thumbnail will make it clear. We're talking about cannabis yet again, and as the title suggests, I'm asking, where's the outcry over recreational wheat and grapes? These are both agricultural products that through a series of processes can be turned into something that can be used to imbibe and get people into an intoxicated state, i.e., the colloquial term, give you a little bit of a buzz. And there's no hue and cry out there for criminalizing the recreational use of these agricultural products. But meanwhile, the issue of cannabis is something that everyone's clutching their pearls and gasping for air that, oh my gosh, we've allowed the recreational usage of this. I'll get into my citations here in a moment, but a quick preface here. I did not ever intend to end up becoming some sort of, I don't know how you want, pundit on the issue of cannabis in Thailand. That said, I think I'm passionate about this because I have watched it organically grow, no pun intended, in the past 2 years economically. And I only really see, I would say the preponderance of the impact to society, to the economy, to Thailand generally, to the nation, to the Thai people, has been beneficial, including recreational use, whatever that means at the end of the day. And as we discussed in a prior video, there was a prior article in the Bangkok Post where they were interviewing somebody involved in the industry, and they brought up the fact that where do you delineate medicinal and recreational, and why has the government taken it upon themselves to get in the business of separating black pepper from fly poop, for lack of a better term, in terms of that issue? That they're going to get into our personal lives about, well, did you use that for a headache, or did you get a little enjoyment out of it, and therefore you were engaging in recreation? Come on. This is just ridiculous. And then meanwhile, as we discussed in that prior video, there seems to be, something of an argument to be made that the fundamental result of this will be a regime, for lack of a better term, wherein people get quote unquote shaken down as a result of trying to do something that prior to a given point in time was perfectly legal in Thailand. And another thing to bear, again, perfectly happy to see it in the comments. Show me the person who overdosed on cannabis. Show me where this is a lethal product. I can show you people who've died from alcohol. I know them personally. I've had clients who have over the years. You can die from alcohol. Let's not ever forget that. Least of all to forget it, things like drunk driving. But again, okay, I can understand. People could get intoxicated on cannabis, they could imbibe on cannabis, and they could drive, they could make an error, and they could kill somebody. Sure, there should be penalties for that, just like there are penalties for drunk driving. But there are no penalties for people who are of age to engage in getting drunk. Why is that okay for recreational purposes? Another question that's come up, and folks have, again, this is a lot of anecdotal evidence that I've heard through comments and things from people on this topic, which is, at first, I've had people tell me privately in comments on this channel, in correspondence, that, I think the alcohol industry may be behind some of this. I suspect that that's probably true. There's been some, for lack of a better term, lobbying to try to, change the laws because the alcohol industry doesn't particularly like it. It might be affecting their bottom line. I didn't initially think of it, but a friend of mine brought up the fact that, yeah, the pharmaceutical industry could also be involved in pushing back against this, or pushing for the illegalization of recreational usage. Again, I never really intended to be some proponent of that, but I don't really see the benefit, the great benefit to Thailand, and the massive cost, the great benefit to Thailand of making recreational use illegal, and the massive cost to this country and the people in it that currently exists as a result of it being okay to undertake recreational use, being legal, as we've discussed. And I really hate the verbiage being used out in the ether. It's interesting because, again, we have a proposed bill out there, but I've noticed that, I saw South China Morning Post this morning, other publications are now saying, oh yeah, it's set to be criminalized. Well, we don't know that. That's not a foregone conclusion. I really get tired of the media out there sort of nudging the narrative, whatever you want to call it, and I don't understand why they do it. Because it's not really all that factual, if you will, reporting of what's actually going on here. This is being debated just the way that any bill would be discussed and debated prior to even proposing it officially in a parliamentary setting. So I don't really understand why the media is out there sort of pushing the narrative that this is some sort of foregone conclusion. It's not. It's not. That said, the other problem I've had in all of this, and the tone of the folks that are pushing against recreational or pushing to make recreational use illegal, the tone sounds a lot like COVID, where it's we know better than you and we're going to just tell you what to do. And my question is, well, if people are of age and they can make their own decisions, again, what's the difference between somebody making the decision, hey, I'm going to sit at home tonight and watch a movie and smoke some cannabis and go to sleep? What's the difference between that and the person who says, hey, I'm going to stay home tonight, I'm going to watch a movie, drink a bottle of wine, and go to sleep? What's the big difference there? Other than, it's my understanding, you don't get a hangover from one and you do from another. Again, I don't really see where the impetus is for this, other than are there special interests involved? Because again, I don't see how this greatly benefits the people of Thailand as a whole. I want to dive into this. I read a recent article. I'm going to go through a lot of this article because the whole thing I just was reading it and kind of gnashing my teeth at just some of the narrative technique here. I found some of it quite galling, frankly. The article is titled New Cannabis Bill Ready for Cabinet, and this is Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com. Quoting directly, Health Minister says revisions will clearly spell out prohibitions on recreational use. Again, just starting off, why? Has there been some hue and cry for that at the grassroots level from anyone? Quoting further, a new version of the Cannabis and Hemp Control Bill will be proposed at the Cabinet meeting next week, Public Health Minister Cholnan Streetcow said on Tuesday. So this will be brought up next week. Quoting further, the revised bill preserves the key point that cannabis is to be used for medical treatment only, but it will also state clearly that, like the way that this is even written, it's written as if there's point counterpoint, but there is no counterpoint. So again, quoting directly, the revised bill preserves the key point that cannabis is to be used for medical treatment only. And then I would have said but instead it says, but it will also state clearly that any use for recreational purposes will not be allowed, the minister says. Well, thanks. So you're taking away rights. You're taking away liberties that Thais have at this moment who are of age and wish to engage in imbibing on this substance that, by the way, doesn't kill anybody and has created a massive boon to the economy. Yeah, you're going to restrict that. And you're just kind of doing it with the tone of, this is what's better for you. We know better. I'll get into that further. Quoting further, the government has yet to clarify what will happen to thousands of businesses that have sprung up in the legal vacuum. I love that, legal vacuum. No, it's legal. There is no vacuum. We've discussed this already. It's on this channel. It's the doctrine of codification. That's the way the civil law works. If it's not specifically proscribed, or I should say, if it's not specifically prohibited per a law through a promulgated statute, the civil law dictates it's legal. It's not a legal vacuum. Again, the verbiage used in this just kind of infuriates me. Again, let me quote again. The government is yet to clarify what will happen to thousands of businesses that have sprung up in the legal vacuum that has existed since cannabis was removed from the list of controlled narcotics in 2022. Yeah, this has been an interesting one. I'm going to move over for a quick minute here to another article, again from the Bangkok Post. This was back in December. Quoting directly, the article is titled, Are High Times Over for Weed Users? Quoting directly, and this is actually a quote from the Minister of Public Health. So quoting directly, we will not shut down all cannabis shops, but they need to comply with the law. The new regulations will not allow them to sell cannabis buds for people to smoke or even have for sale equipment for customers to smoke at their shops. In the past, we did not control usage, but with the new law, using cannabis for recreational purposes will be prohibited. So they say we won't shut down their shops, but we're just going to take basically the one thing they're selling in any kind of volume away from them. That's how they, and there was also, and I don't have the citation here, I also read at one point there was some back and forth with the Minister of Public Health, the new Minister of Public Health, I might add, that people were asking, well, what about people's businesses? What about people who've invested money and time and resources to set up entrepreneurial enterprises, I might add? These are not big going concerns, which makes me wonder if they were big going concerns, would this even be an issue right now? Because there would be enough pushback at a high enough level or with enough financial resources perhaps behind it to basically mitigate this in a legislative sense, to basically forestall this from happening. But apparently that's not the case because it involves a little guy. But I've really disliked the tone of, especially in the case, I believe it was the Minister of Public Health, he was interviewed and people asked him, they said, hey, what about these people's businesses? Oh, it's no problem. Maybe some businesses might close. I think that was said at one point. Well, maybe some might close, but we need the change, whatever. That same kind of cavalier attitude toward people's businesses is the same nonsense that we saw going into COVID, where they shut down people's businesses and they just didn't care. And I think it's born of the fact that politicians don't set up businesses. They don't have to work and earn their money by setting up a small business and putting in time and resources and sweat equity into that business to then see a return. They get a check no matter what. We saw that during COVID across the board, both in the United States and here in Thailand. Folks that were working for the government, it was happy days. They didn't have to show up and work very much, and they got a salary. Everything was hunky-dory. I know that doesn't seem like it's overly connected, but herein it is. It's this cavalier attitude toward these small businesses here in Thailand, set up by people who probably don't have a great fortune. They're not cannabis barons or something. They're just people that want to run their own business, kind of be semi-autonomous, make their own money. And the other question I have is, again, who's going to tell the commercial real estate sector, especially in the tourism areas, that, hey, sorry, you're seeing all these cannabis shops close down because you're taking away the one product that was their main seller that gave them the reason for being there, their raison d'etre for being on that location and renting out that shop or stall. What are you going to tell those real estate owners when those renters are gone? These things have a knock-on effect. And again, this cavalier attitude, well, we may lose some businesses. No, we won't. The people who you impose this rule upon will. You're not going to lose anything. That's why you don't care. Quoting further, the Boontai Thai Party, which is also a member of the current coalition government, earlier championed the liberalization of cannabis, but its bill to regulate the plant failed to pass last year while the previous government was in office. It's my understanding the very people that are pushing this bill are the ones that didn't allow that one to pass, which would have regulated this entire industry. Okay, that's a political question. I won't go too deep into that. But again, it's sort of, again, framed within the context of this article as if, well, there wasn't major popular support for it. No, it was basically bottled up through parliamentary wrangling and not allowed to pass. That's why it didn't pass. There was no great outcry among the masses of Thais to not allow this thing or to not allow that bill to go through, especially when it was already at that point legal. Quoting further, Dr. Cholnan said the revised bill would regulate which parts of the cannabis plant can be used, the manner in which they can be consumed, as well as acceptable quantities for possession. Oh, great. Nanny state. Quoting further, under the new bill, the stem, roots, leaves, and buds of the cannabis plant would be recategorized as narcotic because of their tetrahydrocannabinol THC content. So let me ask this. Why isn't there a hue and cry in Parliament or among these politicians to go after grapes the moment they've passed through the fermentation process, or wheat after it's done the same thing, or honey for that matter, because you can make mead that way? Where's that big outcry? But no, we're focusing on this. Again, something doesn't kill anybody. And I get it. Yes, it does induce a, what do you want to call it, a high, if you will. But again, so does alcohol. We're not restricting that. Quoting further, the minister said earlier that smoking cannabis was likely to require a permit from a doctor. Great. More nanny state. And that the bill would be very clear on how to use the plant for medical treatment. Neat. So we get to be told how to use plants by the government. Quoting further, he noted the bill was different from the version proposed by Boom Thai Thai. Yeah, it's different, which only set out to limit the amount that can be consumed by individuals. Yeah, I said this before. If this was a regulatory bill that said, look, you can't sell more than X number of grams to a person that comes into your store, I would have said, yeah, that's pretty reasonable. You know, but this whole, no, we're going to dictate that it can't be for recreational. We're going to delineate what recreational is down to, you know, picking the fine points of stems versus roots versus branches versus leaves. But come on. Quoting further, that said, the minister insisted the revision does not mean the government is now opposed to the medicinal use of the cannabis plant, saying the bill reflects, quote, a different approach, unquote, to the issue. Yeah, a different approach in that we had liberty before the bill. It presumably, if it's enacted, I don't presume this will be enacted, by the way. I want to be clear. I'm not certain that there's a great deal of support running around for this. There may be. And again, a fine point to get onto here is I see people run around, oh, it's going to be illegalized. No, it's not. That's not what they're saying, but they're saying recreational use will be. And as we've pointed out to this point, that'll have a massive detrimental impact on this industry. Again, regulation is fine, but this whole notion that we need to take 3 steps back into the dark ages where this stuff was illegal and resulted in people going to jail over it, again, presumably there would be criminal penalties associated with these changes. We really going to start locking people back up over cannabis violations? And meanwhile, wasn't part of the proposed bill also to legalize people having up to like 5 yaba tablets, 5 pills of methamphetamine? So meth is all right, but we're going to criminalize cannabis use? Come on. Quoting further, yeah, again, a different approach. Quoting further, he said that the new bill was meant to protect citizens from cannabis abuse that has taken place since the plant was delisted from the narcotic drug list 2 years ago. Reefer madness. Oh my gosh, we got to protect the citizenry. From who? Themselves? And where are you protecting the citizenry from alcohol? It's my understanding you're dropping the taxes on alcohol. You're looking at changing the rules to allow more wide usage or more ability to purchase it. There's going to be no restriction. I haven't done the videos on this. I may do it, but supposedly they're going to take away the 2 to 5 sales prohibition rule, which I can see the argument in favor of that. I think that's probably a good idea. But that said, no problem with booze that kills people, but let's really hammer down cannabis. Again, if this had been an act that said, look, we're going to regulate, we get it. People use this product to gain some kind of buzz, some kind of high. We get that. The same way they use alcohol for the same purposes. Again, there's medicinal alcohol and then there's non-medicinal alcohol. Pretty sure consumer non-medicinal alcohol is where the money in alcohol is, more than medicinal alcohol. But nobody's going after that. And meanwhile, that does kill people, as we've said previously. Alcohol, I've known clients who died from alcohol poisoning, basically. They drank too much and died. Haven't known anybody from cannabis that's ever happened to. Again, there's this push to regulate the citizens from their own behavior, protect them from their own decisions. Again, consenting adults. I'm in favor of criminal penalties for selling to children. I've made that clear many, many times. But among consenting adults, oh no, we got to regulate that. We got to protect them from themselves. But there's no one running out to protect the public from itself when it comes to alcohol. So how does that make any sense? Doesn't make any sense to me. Quoting further, Dr. Tolman's comments came after the numerous complaints about cannabis use among concert goers at the Coldplay concert at Raja Mangala National Stadium over the weekend. So people who went to a music concert smelled weed. Hasn't that been happening since the dawn of time, since it was illegal too? I can tell you the first music concert I went to back in Kansas, where cannabis was illegal and remains illegal, we smelled it there too. And by the way, that isn't good evidence of why this should be regulated. Oh, some people smelled it at a concert? What's that mean? What's that supposed to tell? Again, the narrative behind this, these techniques of using these examples as some kind of clear, evidence that we need to regulate, it doesn't make any sense. Again, I want to, quoting again, quote, Dr. Cholnan's comments came after numerous complaints about cannabis use amongst partygoers at the Coldplay concert at Raja Mangala National Stadium over the weekend. Many patrons said the pervasive smell of marijuana smoke affected their experience. Well, boo-hoo. I get it, okay? And I'm on board with the notion that this should be consumed in private. I do actually believe that, or some sort of designated clubs or something. That's what they were initially talking about. But then when this thing is coming down to the wire, now it's just, oh no, restriction of recreational use. Again, it's been disingenuous what they said they were going to do when they were campaigning and things and before they formed a government, and now it's nope, no recreational use. Very different what they were talking about at that time. Again, and going back to this point on the techniques used in the narrative here, some people at a concert smelled it and it affected their experience. What does that mean? What is that? How is that data point supposed to be useful? That's not citing a study that said, oh, look, test scores are adversely impacted in the schools because since cannabis was legalized, or people are getting violent on the streets in front of cannabis shops and beating people up. No, it's their evidence in favor of massively restricting something that hasn't been restricted low these past 2 years is some people smelled something at a concert. That's supposed to be the underlying reason, a good underlying reason for massively restricting this. Quoting further, Dr. Cholnan said the use of cannabis at concerts is prohibited. Yeah, exactly. It's already illegal. So use the laws we have on the books. What are you talking about? Quoting further, in the same way that smoking cigarettes is prohibited at public venues. Well, yeah, and you enforce that law. I've watched you do it over the years, ever since you imposed it. Quoting further, the problem, he said, was that there were currently no legally enforceable rules that could be applied to punish concert goers who smoke pot. Yes, there can be. We've done the videos on that. We did the videos when it came out. Thai police said, look, we can use our powers under the nuisance laws to detain and fine and possibly, get people to stop engaging in that behavior. That's already there. And they're acting like it isn't because they want to pass this. And they want to take away liberties that currently exist for Thai people. Quoting further, it is believed that under the new bill, all cannabis plantations will require a permit from authorities and must adopt advanced agricultural practice. What does that mean, advanced agricultural practices? Most of this stuff, you stick it in dirt, it grows. I mean, yes, there's advanced agricultural practices associated with hybridization and things of this nature. I get it. But, what does that even mean? To ensure the plants will be medical grade, okay? Plantations at home, as championed by Boom Jai Thai, are not likely to continue. Oh, well, thanks so much. That was a godsend to people, especially little, small farmers. It was an extra piece of income. Now, again, I suspect a lot of people engaged in it, and one wonders if, maybe the laws of diminishing returns have come into play. But that said, it doesn't mean we take away their ability to engage in that activity. Again, this has benefited. What I find fascinating in all of this benefits a wide swath of, for lack of a better term, little guys, little guy Thais. The little people, not big companies, not big concerns, not big agribusiness corporations, just little people who, they have a few rye of land and they usually farm rice or whatever they farm on it, and then they have a little section, cordoned off to grow cannabis. I thought that was a good idea. Or little people, again, little shop owners, little shopkeepers, again, spending their own money, expending their own resources using their own sweat equity to create these little businesses to support themselves without being a burden on society. And I'm pretty sure they'd gladly pay taxes. Here's another one nobody's talking about. This is a tax cash cow. And you're looking to kill it? As I said in the other video, are we in the business of executing golden geese in Thailand? And again, I know the argument, well, medicinal, we can regulate it more, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, this is one of those things where it looks like an exercise of trying to close the barn after the horse has already gotten out. Okay, now I know there are those who don't like the position we're now in, but this isn't going to change it. You're not going to magically turn the business into something more profitable by restricting the liberties of people to use that product. It's not going to work. I've seen it in other contexts, in other places, and read about it in history. It always turns out badly. What are we going to create a giant bureaucracy that is going to do nothing but create stagnance in this particular field? Again, Thailand made a good move on this. And look at it from an international context. Look at it in terms of like geoeconomics or even geopolitics. Thailand has first mover advantage on a cash crop that no one else has legalized. There are massive benefits that can come from this long term, not least of which comes from we've jumped the gun on R&D. We can do research and development where other countries can't. There's also, it is a cash crop. And you can't tell me this hasn't affected tourism. I don't know how we study it because it's primarily anecdotal, but I'm here to say a number of young tourists are coming to Thailand as I won't say this is the only reason they're coming. Obviously, Thailand's great. It's always going to have demand in the tourism sector. Seeing the beaches, seeing the islands, seeing the city here in Bangkok, seeing the palace, seeing all this cool stuff. It's a great tourism destination. But this is just one more point in Thailand's favor when people are deciding from overseas where to spend their tourist dollars. And I don't see a lot of people out there who are going to say, well, cannabis is legal in Thailand, therefore we better not go there because God knows we might go to a Coldplay concert and smell something we don't want to smell. No, nobody says that. That's not how people think. You know, people think, hey, you know, I'm going to Thailand. Hey, cannabis is legal there. Well, I don't like cannabis. I'll just stay away from that. That's what most people are going to say. Or people who do like cannabis are going to say, hey, one more reason to go. Quoting further, meanwhile, many dispensaries that sell cannabis products for medicinal as well as recreational use are anxiously awaiting clarity about their futures. No, they're anxiously awaiting to not have the sort of Damocles hanging over them in terms of their business by a bunch of politicians who I would love to know what business they ever started and kept going and maintained and built up. You know, and I'm sure there's some of them in Parliament that have. But what I'm saying is for the vast majority of politicians, in my experience, and this is both in the United States, here in Thailand, wherever, they haven't built their own businesses. And they're not in the mindset of somebody who's put in, you know, who's sweated blood into their business to get it up and going, and then to just have somebody arbitrarily tell them, oh yeah, you can't sell that product anymore, and that product was probably 60% of your gross sales. Yeah, your business is dead. You know, and I love that this is just sort of glossed over in this whole narrative. Oh, well, the businesses are going to be fine. It's just a change in regulation. No, they're not going to be fine. They're going to be adversely impacted by this course of action. Quoting further, the number of cannabis shops nationwide is estimated to total more than 7,000. 7,000 of these shops. Okay, if you even knock out 1,000 of those, let's say you take out 1/7 by these changes, that's 1,000 commercial, rental, likely retail real estate spaces that are now going to go vacant. Okay, and what's coming in to pick up the slack on that? Have you noticed the trends in the global economy? It's not in favor of commercial real estate. Have a look at the West. It's collapsing. I get Thailand's different. There's malls and things, but we're talking about like the shop house, street level, retail real estate model. Tell me what goes back in there to replace these cannabis shops. And you will be replacing them. And I suspect it's going to be more than 1/7. It's going to be a lot more than 1/7 if you make these really drastic, in my opinion, changes. Quoting further, they sell everything from cannabis buds to oil extract containing less than 0.2% tetrahydrocannabinol. Sorry, I have a problem reading some stuff sometimes. The psychoactive compound that gives the users a quote-unquote high sensation. Again, yes, they sell other stuff, but that's put in there as sort of a sop, if you will, to say, well, they sell other things. I'm here to tell you, the people that are flying in from Michigan that have never been to Thailand before, and they may, I don't know what the legality in Michigan is. Let's not use Michigan. The people flying in here from Kansas, where it is illegal, that want to partake in this, they're going to buy this stuff that is being used for recreational use. They're not coming over here because they said, oh, I've got a sore knee, I'm going to rub CBD oil on it or something. No, they're coming in to use that. That's what they're doing. And again, this is all anecdotal. I don't have some grand statistical layout that can show you exactly and precisely how this is going to detrimentally impact Thailand. But I can tell you it will. I mean, common sense just dictates. You get rid of a product that's currently creating a great deal of demand for not only tourism, but also real estate in Thailand, commercial real estate specifically. That's going to have an impact on the real estate sector. On top of that, and the one that just really I find galling more than anything, is this complete dismissal of small business owners here in Thailand who have started up these businesses and have put in time and resources to get them going, and to have folks that are supposedly they're representing their interests just say, don't worry about that. It's no big deal. That's galling. That's galling to the nth degree. On top of the rest of it, not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but over the past couple of years, I've just wandered into various shops just to kind of see the layout. As we discussed in prior videos, I've been kind of dabbling with getting into this myself. Haven't gone very far into it for kind of the uncertainty that we're still kind of dealing with in it. I haven't wanted to really go too deep down that path, and quite honestly, my duties here at the firm take up far more time than I would ever like. Anytime I ever try to do something on the side, it seems like it eventually just gets overtaken by my work here. But that said, I've kind of dabbled around in it. So I've been in these these businesses and just kind of looked around. Another thing that, I don't know if people are thinking about this, but there's a lot of young people working in these shops. What happens when they lose their jobs or they lose their businesses and now they're shut down? What, they go back to selling this stuff illegally? Is that good policy? Or meanwhile, what happens if they take to the streets? Is that something any of us want? I don't want that. I've been through that more than once here in Thailand, and I love Thailand, and I've, in certain instances, been somewhat sympathetic depending on who was talking about what at given times. But that said, no, it's bad. It's a bad thing. And long story short, all of this can be forestalled if we didn't have a bunch of nanny minders trying to just tell us what to do. The adults of Thailand have figured this out. We've had 2 years to figure it out. It's okay. So sorry to you concert goers for smelling something you didn't want to smell. Nobody's ever said that was okay, by the way. I'm perfectly in favor of the Thai police walking up and saying, hey, you're in violation of the nuisance laws. We're going to detain you. We're going to ask you to leave the concert, or we're going to ask you to stop doing that, and we're going to fine you, whatever. I'm perfectly okay with that. Never said I wasn't. Enforce the laws we've already got on the books, because we do have them. We did the videos on this years back now already. So again, the thing that worries me here is just this cavalier attitude toward an industry that I would argue helped save Thailand's economy coming off the shutdown. The tone of this desire to restrict recreational use sounds a lot like the tone we heard during COVID. We know better than you. We're going to shut down your business because we know better than you. That's terrible. So I hope people will take a breath. I get it. Reasonable people can disagree over some of these issues. But I really hope people just take a breath and not rush into this, because I think you're making a terrible, terrible mistake.